And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. And our show today is sponsored by Luna, terrific sleepwear and more. And we'll be talking about that a little later on in our program. But first, I would like to introduce our guest, Suzie Newell. The Path, she wrote, The Path, Daily Directory for Ladies and Mothers, Witches, and Others. I love the title. Suzie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I got to ask about that title later, right? Are you a witch? I need to hear about that, about it's so unique. I was talking to a girlfriend of mine about this book because I suggested that she read it. I think it's incredibly clever. And when she looked at the title, she said, geez, would you ask her about it? So we'll talk about that a little later on. First, tell our
Absolutely.
audience, first tell our audience about this book, what's it about, and then we'll get into why did you write it?
Okay, so the Daily Direction book is instructional. You open it up, you can do it in the beginning. I kind of give you instructions and I say you can read it any way you want. Some people open it up and do it as, like no, it's just chance. And that's fine. It is written intentionally in order, but you can do it any way you want. Doesn't matter because the daily direction is different for every day. If you read it in order, it sort of takes you on a journey of self-discovery. And the way that it does that is it gives you a daily direction. Something starts off with a concept, and then usually there's a little quip underneath it. It's either a quote from someone or it's me quipping. And then the daily direction directs you towards the concept. And then there's an intention at the bottom, and the intention is self-directed. So the thing that I think is brilliant about this is you create your own path. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what the concepts are and how they apply to you. You get to direct yourself and do it yourself. So
Well,
that is
go ahead.
how it's written.
I don't know if this is going to work, but let me just like hold it up a little bit. Like
Mhm.
I called them little vignettes, little nuggets, right? Because I would pick it up and I'm one of those people. I even go to a museum this way, right? I started at the end, went to the beginning, I was in the middle, and I just literally started to just open up the book and see what appealed to me. Oh, I love doing that, right? I call them my vignettes. And you also hand write on each one too, right? That's your handwriting. And
And
it felt
many of
very
them, yeah.
yeah, it felt very personal to me. Like you were writing this for me. It's like, oh wow, thanks, Suzie. Um, like here's one, number 136. Allow others in. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but maybe with one or two people it is, but they are probably assholes, and you don't need them anyway. I mean, just these are thoughts, right? That how did you think of all these?
So it's a lifetime. I have my own personal journey. And then on top of that, I run a group for women with substance use disorder.
Right.
And then on top of that, I got my doctorate focusing on coping mechanisms. So between all of that work, it wasn't hard for me to come up with it recycles, the concepts recycle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll recognize that, sometimes you won't, but it's by the concept is that your brain needs to learn, be retrained. And like a stroke victim, if you aren't reminded how to do these things over and over and over again, you're never going to change the way your brain reacts. So the goal is to get your brain to react differently. And the reason it's a year-long program is that the concepts repeat and repeat and repeat, but I feel very creatively repeat so that you don't necessarily recognize that you're training your brain to think a certain way.
It's very clever. No, you do not realize you're training your brain to be a certain way. And as I continued to read it, I did eventually sort of start from beginning to end. I realized that there was a true purpose to this. I also had so much fun reading it. It's almost like I didn't realize that there was something in there that was so good for my brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly why I don't. So a lot of times when I do interviews, people will focus on the neuroscience because that's what I studied.
Right.
But the book isn't written that way at all. It's written
No.
very, like you said, you read the page with the asshole on it. And I swear in it, and I talk to you the way that I would like to be talked to about this stuff. And that was the original concept behind it. There are books out there for diagnoses. There are books out there for Christians. There are books out there for other religions, but there's nothing out there for just regular Joe Schmo that wants daily direction. We all struggle. We all have trouble. So this is just daily direction for the rest of us. And so I had brought that up, and it was the middle of COVID, and my husband said, I might know someone who could write that pretty easily. So, and because it was COVID, I had access to all these artists. It was very, very easy that way.
It's fantastic. Let's talk about you growing up. What was your life like growing up, and what was the impetus for writing this book? It was pretty extraordinary.
So my family is high achievers, all but highly functioning alcoholics, and all of them. I have a grandmother who is not an alcoholic, and that's it, really. My uncle and my aunt isn't, but she's not blood relation. So I'm trying to think of anyone else, but there's a lot of, and then there's a lot of spectrum. Like we're very, high functioning spectrum, high IQ spectrum. So you have a lot combined with all those kind of undiagnosed mental health issues and alcoholism. By the time my father died when I was 16, by the time I was 19, I landed myself in treatment. And I was sober most of my adult life, and I relapsed in my 30s, which actually was very meaningful because it led me to understand a little bit more about where I am today, or it led me toward where I am today. Because when I was young, I embraced everything. I was like, great, I get this, and I'm going to stay sober. It's all good. When you're older, you have a lot more to lose, and you have, it's a lot more meaningful when you screw up.
Yeah.
So I was able to embrace the concepts of mind, body, spirit, and my brothers and sisters. I have a brother who's sort of similar to me that way. And we were able to he and I were able to get through it. But my sisters and my one sister died of an overdose at 53 a few years back. And that was sort of the impetus for me to write the book. I started the meeting and then I wrote the book. I went back to school. I did all of that after that because I felt very driven to. But I had lost at that point my father to cancer when I was 16, my mother to cancer when I was 26, and I would say she died of a broken heart. And then a sister to overdose and a brother to cirrhosis. So I have one sister left and one brother of a family of 7, and me.
That is a lot to take in. I want to continue with that thought in a minute. And because as I said, we are sponsored by Luna, and we have a very brief commercial, and then we will be right back. Okay. That's pretty amazing. Thank you.
Welcome to Luna, where the mission is to elevate rest with beautifully designed sleepwear made of organic Pima and cozy cotton silks. Known for pioneering washable silks, everything Luna designs is to improve your rest with their state-of-the-art products such as no-twist waistbands, strategic ventilation, and stay-put sleeves. Luna was founded by LA native Ashley Merrill, and the company prides itself on paying attention to every detail. Check out these beautiful products. They're so comfy, you'll finally want to toss out your old t-shirt sleepwear and put yourself into one of these beautiful sleep sets and robes, and there's so much more. Go to luna.co and use Deborah20 as your discount code. That's DEBORAH20 at luna.co and join the Better Rest Revolution.
Thank you for that commercial and Luna. Now, we were talking about your family and what drove you to write this book primarily. your sister's overdose, which is so tragic. And I'm so sorry, really. You, I believe, were in the bathtub or in the shower when this whole thing came to you. Is that true?
Yeah, I was taking a bath and my husband walked in and I said, I really think, and it was, trying to think if it was like February or April, probably April of 2020. And
Yeah.
my daughter had lived in New York City and had graduated from the new school. And she had pretty much lost everything within 3 days and moved home and was in their basement. And I had said, hey, I just wish there was a book like this out here. And he said, I think you could write that. And I thought, I could write that. But I thought I have no way of, knowing how to put this all together. And of course, that my daughter is a creative director. I mean, that's what she does. And so
Yeah.
I just said, hey, I have these 365 entries. And she got an artist. She got, she did all the InDesign. She and a guy named Matt Craighead did all the editing and put it all together. And then they're doing an Audible book too, as well. And a guy named Matt Vonderlin is doing the sound engineering for that. And it's just, I feel very lucky to be connected because, and at the time, I pushed him. I had this group of young people that I pushed like crazy. But I think it was good for all of them because everybody was in sort of a difficult place with COVID and depressed about losing everything because everybody had been performing, had been working, and had been doing their thing. And then all of a sudden in 3 days, they had zero work. And so that was a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah. Let's talk about the mind, body, spirit, because that all works together in this book. Would you go through each one for us, briefly, that you think people can really pick up on and go, yeah, that's me. I need that. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the way that it works is you have three concepts to do. And I always say that I ended up getting lucky because I was kind of naturally attracted to this kind of stuff. And what it is the mind is clearing the mind. So you do what I call cleaning off the table, and you can do that for your whole life, or you can do it for an incident. So if the incident is something that's, got your head all crazy, then you need to clear off the table about that incident. So you just sort of admit it to someone else, or go to a counselor, or even a pastor, or your whoever, the people that you trust to tell this important information to, or your whole history. I mean, you can do little bits or profound bits. And then, so that's the mind. You clear that off, and doing that creates an open space for you to do the rest of the work. Then the rest of the work is you can. So if you confess something, and people will always say, it clears off my chest, or I feel lighter in the chest, and that's actually dopamine. It really is opening up those dopamine receptors and helping you to move on to the next place. And the next place is your body. So in order to maintain good habits and good practice and raise endorphins, and everybody seems to know endorphins, you got to move. It doesn't have to be an exercise program. It doesn't have to be anything important, but you need to just do something every day. And I think if we focus on, I want to lose this weight and I want to do it this way, and then you're never going to win. You absolutely are never going to win. Just once a day, you move, you do something. Maybe today you don't pick up that bag of candy. Today you walk around the block. And in 5 years, maybe you've lost 3 pounds or 5 pounds or 20 pounds, but that's never the goal. The goal is just to be on the path and to keep moving forward. So so that's the body. And then the soul part, or the spirit part, is my favorite thing. It's actually associated with raising your dopamine levels again. And this is what keeps you in an elevated space where you're happier, you're more content. And it doesn't matter what you believe. I don't care. And that's the beauty of this book, is that you can be a Christian, you can be Hindu, you can not believe in God at all. You can use just meditation, but really what you have to do is you have to train your brain to be quiet. And so you do that through meditation, you do that through prayer, you do that through ritual, you do that through whatever works for you. But you've got to do that maybe once a day. And you start with 3 minutes. You don't have to do more than 3 minutes. Then you'll want to do a little more than 3 minutes. You know what I mean? As time goes on. But if you give yourself this really tiny time limit that nobody can argue, I don't have 3 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
Right,
but,
right. I mean, you might not have 30, but you have 3.
What do you suggest doing to quiet the mind? Because when I listen to you, I think of me, and I think how it's very, very hard for me to quiet it and for that to become a habit. I really try and I do really well for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. Then something will bug me. I will ruminate. I'm a ruminator, and I'll come back to it. And like my husband will say, Deborah, please let it go. And I think, all right, Deborah, you're not serving yourself. So then I'll get out and do number 2, right? Get my body in it to get some endorphins. And then I end up in that spin cycle where I can't get out of it because I'm worried about number 1, 2, and 3. Like, what do you do to just stop and quiet the mind? You're laughing. I'm sure you've been there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we all spin a little bit. And I think the greatest, for me, the biggest game changer was understanding that there's no right way or good way or everything. It's just the trying. It's not. So breathing techniques is the greatest entryway into meditation. And when I teach people who are newly sober in these really raw, horrid conditions, they cannot, I mean, you talk about a brain that's spinning. They have 0 dopamine. They have no way to deal with any of this. They could care less. I give them, I say 3 minutes, and sometimes they can't make it 3 minutes. It's like, It's just so much, but they breathe, and they breathe with me. And we go through just, hold your breath, let it out. Now breathe through your nose, focus on breathing through your nose, because you can't, if you're thinking about breathing through your nose, then you can't think about other things. And then I say, while you're doing that, focus on something beautiful. So usually, and I'll have a concept, maybe a flower, and you can develop your own. Focus on something beautiful and relax your shoulders. And then you go in a circle, breathe, relax your shoulder, or focus on something beautiful, relax your shoulders. Because this is us. We're always like this, right? So you relax your shoulders, breathe, focus on something beautiful. And then by doing that rotation in your head, nothing comes in. Things do come in occasionally, but you'll get better at it. And it's okay if they come in. You're human. I mean, that's the thing, is that you can't do this wrong. There's no way to do it wrong. You just have to do it. And that's the big thing, is that if you're not doing something every day, you're not opening your brain to the possibilities and the changing.
Suzie, these techniques have been around for centuries, yet somehow in America, we've gotten so far away from doing this sort of thing that really helps us. It'd be so great, right, if we could introduce this early in school, if we're not doing it at home with our kids, right? Like, I say this quite often, you learn to read, you learn to write, you learn to add, but you've got to learn how to self-care. That breathing, people, I'm telling you, it works. Like, if there's anything that works to get me from spinning out of control of my own mind, it's to stop, even if it's honestly, even 1 minute, and do that breathing, just like Suzie suggested, and that she talks about in her class. It brings you back a little bit to center, right, Suzie?
Oh yeah, and it gets better over time if you practice it more often. That's the really important part, and that's why it's the path 365. You have to keep going. You have to stay on the path. You can fall off. You can fall off every day. You can suck at everything every day. You have to get back on. And that's the part that I think I feel really good about. I feel really strongly about, is that I don't care how you do it. I don't care how good you do it. I don't care if you're the best. I just care that you keep getting back on.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter where you do it. You could have a quiet moment in the bathroom, just as long as you do it, right? Let's face it. Right. I mean, look at you. You had your best thoughts come to you in the tub. So
it was true. And it's always true.
Right? I mean,
It's
honestly,
always true. You're the first person to catch that. That is so the truth. I mean, my mind quiets, and then all of a sudden I'm like, huh, I should do this. It's very true.
Well, that's me too. I picked up on that with you when we spoke earlier on the phone, and I got it. You are a trained nurse anesthesiologist, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you're trained in many disciplines, honestly. And I want to talk a little bit about the science behind all this, because you talk about that as well. You talk about pills, taking pills. You're not anti-pill, but you're saying, right? If you could tell our audience, why do we have to go to the pill first? Like, is there a way that we can start these practices first and then perhaps go to something else? Could you talk to our audience about how you feel about all that and the science of our brain? Go ahead.
It's funny that you bring it. So just today, my niece went through, defended her dissertation, and her dissertation was a 9 months meditation project with kids in the lower income district and measuring their blood pressure. And there was profound significance with this, right? So they had lower blood pressure after 9 months of practicing meditation. And one of the reviewers questioned, they don't have even this good of results with drugs. And of course, I'm just an audience member and I can't participate. I wanted to climb through there and scream like, duh! So I think one of the biggest problems in healthcare today is that our research is funded through pharmacology. And so everything we do, I know, well, that's what I'm saying, is that's the biggest problem. So people are like, well, there's no research to back it up. And I'm like, well, there is. It's just not well-funded research because it's hard to get funding for this kind of research. Then the second part of it is the way that our healthcare system is set up is you go in, you get a pill, and we're not training people. We sort of train them to say this stuff, but there's no accountability because we don't have a central system. So we can't say, listen, you have to show that you have put in this kind of effort before we do this sort of treatment. So
I agree.
There are a lot of people who genetically need some kind of help with, for instance, their cholesterol levels, that kind of thing. But there are also people who have gone off medication after losing 50 pounds. So I think that there are arguments that we aren't addressing the primary issues. And
look, Suzie, if there's money to be made, they will push it the more organic way of healing oneself. They'll push it to the back, and it's like, no, you need this first, and then you can relax. And to me, I believe wholeheartedly in what you're saying, because I've also seen the research and what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Maybe we do need the pill after, but we must try this first. Again, I believe there's centuries of research behind what you're saying, right?
Oh yeah.
Centuries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My big joke is my grandmother, who was born in 1903, used to always say things like, and they did research to tell you that.
That's right. I know.
Research project.
I know my grandmother used to say that stuff too. She goes, I just lived it. I know.
Right. Exactly.
You talk about doing a brain scan and how you can actually see the effects, right, of what you're talking about.
So that's what led me here.
Yeah,
that's what led me here. So when you talk about mind, body, spirit, the centuries of the yogi back in, thousands of years ago, or any religion sort of takes you down this path. Like Catholicism has their rosary, and you do your beads, which is just another form of meditation. I love Catholicism because I feel like they have all of this stuff formulaically in their practice. It's just been, maybe some people still use it that way, but confession is your first counseling and psychotherapy, right? There's all sorts of different kinds of things within religious practices that recognized you needed to clear the plate. You needed to, the exercise I think was always a part of life. And then you needed that ability to quiet your mind. So the spiritual practice historically took care of all of this. And I think that now we don't have that as readily available. Plus we have the added addition of not needing to do physical exercise and an overabundance of really very nutritionally empty food.
Oh yeah.
So today, the way that I got into this was I had the sister who overdosed, and I had this history myself. And I started studying, why am I different than my sister? What did I do differently? And I discovered that, I didn't discover, but through my work, I understood that the person with substance use disorder has a lower dopamine level. So if you have if you're addicted to a chemical or an alcohol or whatever it is, your dopamine levels are either non-existent. If you're in full chronic addiction, you might need a chemical to replace your dopamine because you don't make any.
Right.
So if you look at a brain scan of someone who's even 3 months into a cocaine addiction, it can be their dopamine receptors are not at all lit up. There's absolutely no dopamine receptors. In other words, they wake up feeling like the world is coming to an end every single day. So it very much explains that behavior, right? If you felt like the world was coming to an end every single day that you woke up, what would you do to get your hands on the chemical that brought you back to normal? So I think that's what people don't understand, is that addiction is the craving of normalcy, not getting high. And it's very physiologically understood that in order to feel normal, people need that chemical. And not even good, like just barely above functioning is what they feel like after they get that chemical. So I understood that to be true. But then I also understood that, if you binge out on ice cream and spend the weekend in front of, watching Netflix, you might wake up Sunday morning feeling pretty crappy.
Oh, so really icky. Yeah.
Yeah. You've replaced your dopamine receptors with some sugar and some over resting or overindulging. Or if you have a couple bottles of wine the next morning, and they've showed this on imaging studying too, that you don't have to be a chronic alcoholic. You can drop your dopamine levels pretty significantly just from a little bit of drinking. So not by a little bit, I mean like a good night out. So we all, like many people, know how it feels to wake up the next morning and feel like, oh, I am really depressed, or I'm very ashamed or disproportionate to the night. You know what I mean? You feel more depressed than you think you should. And that is very much related to your dopamine levels. So my investigation of coping mechanisms went into, how do you bring that dopamine back up?
Which is back to the mind, body, spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, with the dopamine, do you need a little extra dose of the body, where extra dose of getting out there? I went through some grief, and it really hit me in particular very hard. And I started walking. I'm a big walker, and then I walked my way into doing marathons. And then, of course, I busted my knee, but that's a whole nother story. But I needed that hit, right? That hit, that endorphin. Every time I got out there and I was running, and this is just a few years ago, it's not that long ago, and I did one marathon, then I had to do another. I was obsessed because I almost got that dopamine. I did get the dopamine from it, right? And I was drugging myself in a way, right? But in a holistic way. Can we overdo it? I actually think I overdid it. Or no?
I don't know. So coming from a addiction perspective, it's really hard to say, well, gosh, she replaced running with depression. What's worse? You know what I mean? So I feel like, you can overdo anything, I suppose. In extreme cases, were you happy? Was it interfering with your life?
No, in fact, I lost a lot of weight, and wherever I went, people are like, "Oh my God, you look fabulous." I'm thinking, I'm keeping this. I'm keeping this thing up. It's like, this is great. So actually, I think you helped me answer my own question. No, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt whatsoever.
Right. So if it doesn't interfere with your life, then it's not an addiction.
Do you mind if I put you on the spot and have you read an excerpt from your book that really speaks to you? You told me a couple. So You decide if you could surprise us all.
I'll start with the classic 3 because I feel like 3 is the one that that sort of gets you on your way.
Okay.
So the third entry is called Open Your Heart. Compassion is revolutionary. In order to heal from our history of trauma or abuse, we have to be open. The anxiety and pain are the byproducts of fighting. The internal war we feel flares up when we are shut down, living in fear, and listening to that voice in our heads. Tell that bitch to shut up. She isn't welcome here. Now, let something else in. Let it replace the constant negativity. Compassion for yourself and others is a good place to start. It softens the edges, begins the healing. Picture your heart as a vessel and pour only elixir from the fountain of life into it. Clean out all that pain and negativity. You are on a journey now, and you no longer do bad things. Being wrong is natural. You learn how to improve and move forward. This is only possible if you are willing to learn, willing to be open to all of the possibilities, willing to take a leap of faith, and be honest with yourself. And the intention is what negativity keeps your heart from truly opening to others. And it's like there's a bunch of writing on it. It's kind of a pretty page.
Right. And if you read this, like for me, I read this outside because I love to sit outside. Even if it's raining, I'll sit under an awning or something. And because I feel like I'm in nature. When I read this, I love I call them assignments, because at the very end, you know, there's a question posed there, and I would take it actually seriously, and I would take the time or a moment to answer that. And if I really liked one of these, I would go back to it. That's what's great about this book. You can go back to it once and again if you feel like you need this particular, lesson or chapter or moment. You can go right back to it until you're feeling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the reason I always use this one is that if I lecture about it, I'll say, 50% of you were like, I love that bitch part. And 50% of you were like, I love that fountain of life part. But usually it's like the opposite 50%. And so that's my point about it. It's like, there's a little bit of something for everybody in it. It speaks to both that kind of hippie side and that really practical minded side. But what I always stress is that you have to be open. You have to be open to changing a little, because if you can't open that space, change will never happen. So you have to be open to that compassion for yourself. You have to be open to sort of visualizing something, but you don't have to be weird about it. You know what I mean? You can just be a regular gal who sometimes pictures a flower and closes her eyes and breathes a little, because it's what helps bring the dopamine.
That's why I hope that you or anyone could bring these types of lessons to our young people. And I mean, very young people, so that this just becomes part of everyone's life. It's not anything I was really taught as a young kid, because it was all about, success and homework and get it done. And it's like, my gosh, you could probably do all of that, maybe, if you could just do all of this first, so that you can sort of prepare yourself for what's coming or what's ahead. But you can't if you don't know how to calm your own inner self, right?
Yes, yeah, that's funny, because my daughter used to say to me, she doesn't say it as much now, but she'll say, "Okay, Mom, I've breathed, I've taken a walk, I'd like to." She's like, "I'm still stressed out." It's like, well, sometimes you're stressed in school. It's just the way it is. It's a stressful time. So when you mention kids, I always laugh at her, because the poor thing, you know what I mean? I pushed her too. So I know what you're saying.
Well, I have 3 kids. And I have 3 kids. Number 1, because I didn't know what I was doing, right? I mean, I pushed a little bit. It's like, well, I think you have to do this. By number 2, I did a little bit less. And number 3, it's like, what do you want to do? Yeah, fine, not a problem. So we do learn. It's a journey, but it's also what we're taught, right? If we weren't taught these principles, that's why I say for young people to start this when they're young is great. Tell us how people can get in touch with you and what you offer for people. And of course, to pick up this book, but what you offer to clients and people who come to you.
Well, I do. So I have a book on Amazon. I also have a website called thepath365.com. I've done a variety of things. I'm usually just speaking, but I've also done little mini classes for like, I hesitate to call them therapy groups because I'm not a therapist. And so that
Right.
is, I can't use that term, but I do like a peer support circle,
Mhm.
and go through sort of some of these techniques.
Yeah.
So I've done.
So
I mean,
you've done
that's
that.
so I do. And
Yeah.
then I do a weekly substance use disorder meeting online. We're
Right.
doing another one of those. It's called and that's on the website too. It's Recovery Path for Mothers and Others, and that's something that people can take and do themselves, because it's a peer support. It's not complicated, so I can help people set those up in their own towns. Or you don't want these groups to get too big because it's sort of they'll start being on top of each other. So you want them to
Right.
be able to keep them smaller. So I always encourage people to start their own groups.
So before I let you go, just let people know something a little outside of what we're talking about. What do you love to do for fun? I mean, maybe it's this, right? And maybe it's helping people, but something other than this. What do you love to do for fun? And tell us something about you that nobody would know.
I love music, so I go to music festivals. I am a music festival. That's my big treat for myself. So I go to Bonnaroo every year. I do a lot of just outdoor music is fun for me. And then something about myself that nobody would know. I was a cheerleader in high school, which is really unexpected.
You're adorable.
When people are always kind of shocked, they're like, really? I'm like, I know, but my sisters were cheerleaders and it just seemed like the thing to do. And
Yeah, I didn't make the cheerleading squad. I couldn't do a cartwheel. It was like, you get over there. So it's like, okay. So I swam. So I found something else. See, if they toss you off one thing, people, you could find something else to do. Suzie, I so enjoyed having you on our show. Do you want to give one quick takeaway to our audience?
Compassion for yourself. I mean, just take care of yourself instead of fighting everything and everyone. Be kind to yourself.
I will take that one for myself today. So thank you very much. Suzie Newell, The Path, daily direction for ladies and mothers, witches and others. Uh-oh, I forgot to ask you, the witches. Who are the witches?
Oh, right. So it was originally going to be bitches, since we can swear here. And and then because I do really love an alternative spirituality. I love all of I love everything. I find it all very fascinating. The witches part seemed a real natural change to that because my husband and my daughter both thought bitches on the front might be a little bit turn off for some people. And so for different reasons, he thought because it's a swear word and she thought because it's not a popular word right now. And I said,
no.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? So it's one of those things. So she was like more on the New York political side. And he was more like, don't swear on the front of the book.
Well, plus it's almost been like overused. It's like, hey, bitches. It's like, okay,
right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
so
been
the
there,
witches it was kind of my I love that whole witchcraft trend. I think it's fun, that whole celebrating the female. I love that whole thing. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, we didn't really even get into much about women in mental health, but I know that that's something else that people can look up on your website and find out more about women in mental health and us being taken seriously for what it is that we are feeling in our lives, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so much.
I know. Well, thank you, Suzie. It really was just an honor to be speaking to you. Please go to her website. I hope that I sort of teased everybody to just go to the website now, look up more, pick up the book. I love this book, easy to read. I've been putting it on my nightstand so that I could just pick it up and thumb through it.
Path365.com.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, check out the website, check out the book. And Suzie Newell, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us on Deborah Kobylt Live. You'll find us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on all audio platforms, whether it's Apple, whether it's iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, you'll find us. Thanks for tuning in to Deborah Kobylt Live. Thanks to Luna for sponsoring us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.